Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Wiz Talk with Chase. I am Chase Coburn here today. Breaking news out of the association. The Washington Wizards have traded for the Dallas Mavericks big man Anthony Davis, 10-time All-Star, one of the NBA's greatest 75 players of the list they released a few years ago. And yes, that means a future Hall of Famer, Anthony Davis, is going to the Washington Wizards. What a deal by Washington. And I'm making some articles and some coverage. It's going to break down Dallas's side of things. So if you want to see that, links to that are going to be in the description. But we're going to really focus from a Washington Wizards spectrum here, being on Wiz Talk with Chase. Hope you guys do enjoy. Please subscribe, follow, share, and view. I think first and foremost, there have been two, for the people who think it was a great trade for the Wizards, the whole thought is they didn't have to give up much. We're going to break down exactly what the package was. But then the one pushback is like, sure, go ahead and trade him if you're not giving up much. But it's like, why trade for him, right? Why go and get Anthony Davis when you've been a rebuilding team? Why go get Anthony Davis when you're 13-36? Is he really going to move the needle alongside Trae Young, two guys who, look, you're buying low for a reason. They've been extremely inconsistent. They've been extremely injury prone, and their contributions have not been, wins have not been resulting from their contributions as of late. So why go and trade for them when their contributions aren't leading to victories? And I guess for the Wizards, the Trae Young trade, I mean, it was too easy to make, right? Young was just done with Atlanta. It made sense to go and trade for him. He's a creative offensive mind. But for me, I think the Wizards make this deal with Anthony Davis because I think they're ready for blast off. I think the Wizards are ready to end the rebuild. It's been 3 years, right? I know a lot of people just expect the Wizards to live in the basement because they've been in the basement for 45 years. But they haven't made a conference final since 1979. It's been really rough for the Washington Wizards and Washington Bullets. It goes back a long time. And since Wes Unseld was a player, that's forgetting the coaching days. It's in the Sun. It's been a long process. It's been a torturous, tremendous process for the Washington Wizards. However, I think you're making this trade because you're saying, look, the rebuild is over. I know a lot of people are thinking, why not stay bad for another year, another 2 years? But at some point, how many young players do you need? I mean, the Wizards have built out their core. You got Bilal Coulibaly from 2023. You got 3 first-round picks, Alex Sarr, Bub Carrington, Keyshawn George from 2024. You got both Trey Johnson and Will Riley from 2025. So between that, and you have enough players in there. You're going to add one more guy, right? Anthony Davis and Trae Young, ESPN reported they're most likely not going to play. I didn't expect them to. So the Wizards are going to get another top draft pick this year. They're going to get another top contributor. They're going to get it at Darren Peterson, a Cam Boozer, and AJ DeBonsa if they get good lottery luck. And if they do, you're telling me a starting lineup with Trae Young, Trey Johnson, AJ DeBonsa, Alex Sarr, Anthony Davis. You're telling me that's not a coveted lineup next year? You're telling me that's not a team that can't compete in the East in a year or two? So I think the Wizards are ready for blastoff. The 2027 draft class is really weak. There's no reason to be bad again. Kind of being mediocre and being in that fringe playoff range that Wizards fans always dreaded when they had Bradley Beal and Kyle Kuzma, that's okay now because you know that it's a step in the right direction. It's crazy. For as bad as this team has been and for as ugly as it's looked with a 13-36 record thus far, the Wizards have had their chances. They've competed really well with some of the top teams when they've been fully healthy and had all their guys on the floor. They've held many leads that they've simply blown. But now when you add in Trae Young and Anthony Davis, you're just a much better team, both offensively and defensively. You're getting one of the top defensive anchors in the NBA now in Anthony Davis, and you already have one of the top offensive creators in Trae Young. And so I think for the Wizards, the deal makes perfect sense. You're not giving up much, right? The full package of the trade, Wizards are getting Anthony Davis, D'Angelo Russell, Jaden Hardy, and Dante Exum, and are giving up Chris Middleton, Malachi Branham, Marvin Bagley. They're also giving up A.J. Johnson, 2 first-round picks, and 3 second-round picks. So Middleton, Branham, Bagley, these guys were rotational players who don't fit the Wizards' timeline. A.J. Johnson, a lot of raw talent. Was he going to put it together? I don't know. He was kind of hopping between the G League and the NBA. So you're not giving up much. You're not giving up much. And so if you're the Wizards, those 2 first-round picks that you're giving away as well, the one's from Oklahoma City, that's going to be this year. That's going to be pick 28, pick 29, pick 30. And then the pick from Oklahoma, from Golden State for the 2030, that's top 20 protected. So the Wizards are really trading nothing and getting a lot in return. It's a no-risk, high-reward deal. I understand the risks that come from trading for Anthony Davis. He's very injury prone. And that frankly is a concern. I mean, when he's on the floor, teams succeed. They're much better defensively. They're much better offensively. He's a guy who can average 20 to 25 points per game on any given night with really respectable defensive metrics. He's never a liability on any end of the floor. But again, the best ability is availability, and that has been his biggest issue throughout his entire career. But, specifically exemplified over these past few years. Only played 20 games this year, 51 last year, a rare 76 in 23-24, but 54, 40, 36. Injuries have really been a concern for Anthony Davis. He has really struggled to stay on the floor consistently. But again, with the assets they gave up, even if you're getting 45, 50 games a year out of Anthony Davis, that is good enough if you're getting him at an all-star level. And so I think what the Washington Wizards did here is no matter what happens with Anthony Davis, because I do think he will make an impact. I do think he's going to take Washington back into the postseason. I do think he's going to make the Wizards a competent, respectable contender again in the Eastern Conference. But say he doesn't. I think really what this move does, it's more important than any player that's leaving or any player that's being brought in or any asset, is it just shows the Wizards' shift in culture. This reminds me a lot of my Baltimore Orioles going out and getting Pete Alonso, where it's like, wow, they did something that they usually don't do. When's the last time you saw the Wizards trade for a player of this caliber? Give up assets for a player of this caliber? No, Kristaps Porzingis was not a player of this caliber. Trae Young's not a player of this caliber. The Wizards are not a franchise that is going to make moves like this, that is going to make Trae Young alongside Anthony Davis in back-to-back months to pair alongside a great young core. This is a different culture. This is a different franchise. Perhaps the worst franchise in the history of sports has really turned things around. This was an absolute masterclass over these past 3 years, and still counting, done by Will Dawkins, general manager, Michael Winger, president of basketball operations, and the overall Wizards management team. If you just look at the pieces, they were a 37-35 win team. They inherited a mess. It was terrible what they inherited. They inherited a team that was mediocre, never good enough to do anything in the playoffs, but also not bad enough to ever get a good draft pick. And they had terrible contracts. And he somehow turned Bradley Beal into Chris Paul. They immediately turned Chris Paul immediately into Jordan Poole and that 2030 Warriors first round pick that came into play here. Then they saw Kyle Kuzma, another guy who's just on a big contract. What are you going to do with him? They end up trading him to Milwaukee in a really good trade for a future first-round pick that wasn't even involved here, but most importantly, for Chris Middleton and A.J. Johnson. Going back to Jordan Poole, they then flip him for C.J. McCollum. Immediately flip McCollum for Trae Young. So already right there, you essentially traded Bradley Beal for Trae Young. And then now, when you include Kyle Kuzma, you use Kyle Kuzma for Chris Middleton and A.J. Johnson, and those were the nucleus of a trade to get Anthony Davis. So, alongside maybe a few added assets, Jared Butler to get an additional first-round pick, the Wizards essentially traded Bradley Beal, Kyle Kuzma, and Jared Butler for Anthony Davis and Trae Young. I mean, this was a masterclass by the front office. And they broke down this mess piece by piece, and now they built a contending corpse. They have. More moves are coming still. They're not done, obviously. But, Shams Charania said it. Michael Winger said it. It's time for blast-off. No, you don't want to be bad again. The 27 class is terrible. Get one more guy in the 26 class, and you have your core. Make the playoffs next year. Make the play-in. Become contenders by 2027, 2028. And so, I think for Washington, you're getting a guy in Anthony Davis, and again, there's little risk involved. I think anything is a win for the Wizards, even given his injury risks. It only becomes dangerous for me once money becomes tied in. And I don't know if they will extend him, but Wizards, if Anthony Davis wants to accept his player option of $62 million in 2 years, which I assume he will, it'll be 2 more years left on the books. But even if they just need to trade him for a box of basketballs because it's not working, I mean, for the gamble, giving up nothing for the gamble that it does work, that Anthony Davis and Alex Sarr being together in the paint, that's an unstoppable duo defensively. And then Trae Young being able to work in the pick and roll with both Anthony Davis and Alex Sarr, the pick and pop, plus perimeter players, maybe a guy like A.J. DeBonza or Darren Peterson to add alongside Keyshawn George and Trae Johnson. Like, why can't this team be there in a few years? Why won't they be there? This is a team that isn't far off. And let's not even ignore some of the other pieces as well. D'Angelo Russell's a decent backup point guard. Jaden Hardy has potential. I think those guys could be future assets as well. And so, look, if the Washington Wizards become instant contenders, no. But they made this trade because it indicates that they are tired of the same old mess. They are not the Washington Wizards that people think about them as, that they are regarded as the worst franchise, arguably, in the history of pro sports, at least over the past 40 years. It's been bad. They haven't won 50 games since the 1970s. But Michael Winger and Will Dawkins have changed the culture. They've changed the mentality. They have drafted well. They built a really good young core, and it would not surprise me if this team is a contender in the East next year or in 2 years. I don't think they're as far off as people think. Look at the Detroit Pistons. They went from 15, 17 wins to 44 the next year. It is not that hard in the NBA to go from really bad to really good. Ask the 2 number 1 seeds right now, Detroit and Oklahoma City. And Dawkins stole the playbook from Oklahoma City. He was in OKC. He saw how they did it. He saw how when you pair veterans with good young players, the results that could follow. And so he's following that same blueprint. And if you're following the same blueprint of the reigning NBA champions, possibly soon to be back-to-back NBA champions, that's a pretty good blueprint to follow. And I think the Wizards have nailed it thus far. So that's the core. Trae Young, Trae Johnson, a top wing, whether it's Boozer Dabonsa or Darren Peterson coming up this draft, most likely. Anthony Davis and Alex Sarr. Add in Will Riley, add in Bub Carrington, add in Keyshawn George, add in Bilal Coulibaly, add in Justin Champagnie. I think this team's there. I think this team's got a core that will allow them to contend. And I can't believe I'm saying this, Washington Wizards fans. I think there's great reason for optimism, and I think there's great reason to believe that over these next 2-3 years, you're going to see the Washington Wizards as a premier contender in the National Basketball Association. And frankly, the fact that this Anthony Davis trade not only signifies improvement on the court, but a change in culture, a change in mentality, a change in the standard in this franchise, that is most important. Thank you guys so much for tuning into this edition of Wiz Talk with Chase. Really starting to get some great Wizards coverage going here toward the end of the season. And as we enter one of, if not the most important offseason of the rebuild so far, with, again, possibly one of those 3 star-studded draft picks or another if they don't get the great odds in the lottery. But we shall see how that all goes. Thank you guys again so much for tuning in here to Wiz Talk with Chase. Again, links in description to our newsletter, our social media platforms. You're going to want to see those for sure. Signing off here from Wiz Talk with Chase, I am Chase Coburn, saying so long from Wiz Talk with Chase.